March 6, 1945. Morning light filters through smoke over Cologne. The air smells of cordite and burning wood. Oberleutnant Wilhelm Battleworthy adjusts his periscope inside a Panther tank positioned near the cathedral. Through the cracked optics, he sees rubble-choked streets, buildings reduced to skeletal frames. The Rhine flows at his back, dark and impassable. The Hohenzollern Bridge, blown by German engineers 3 days earlier, sits twisted in the water. There is no retreat. His orders, delivered by a captain who looked exhausted beyond his years, are simple. Hold this position. Engage any American armor. Fight to the last round. Battleworthy is 28 years old. He has been commanding tanks since Normandy. Before that, training in Poland. Before that, the Eastern Front for 6 months in 1943. He wears the ribbon of the honor roll clasp of the Heer. His crew has been together for 4 months. That is an eternity in these final days of the war. The gunner, whose name history will not record, has been with him since February. Young, perhaps 19. Good eyes, steady hands. The loader is older, a veteran transferred from a destroyed unit. The driver and radio operator complete the crew. 5 men in a 45-ton steel box, waiting for the Americans to come. The Panther OSF. A is a formidable machine, 75mm KGK 42L/70 gun. Muzzle velocity of 3,000 feet per second with standard armor-piercing ammunition. Frontal armor 80mm thick on the glacis, sloped at 55 degrees from vertical. Effective thickness against perpendicular impact exceeds 140mm. The turret face is 100mm. The gun mantlet, a curved piece of cast steel, is another 110mm. American 75mm Sherman guns cannot penetrate this armor from the front at combat ranges. German crews know this. They have known it since Normandy. It gives them confidence even when outnumbered. For months, Panther crews like Battleworthy's had written an equation in steel and fire, an equation that favored Germany despite impossible strategic odds. 75mm guns that could kill at ranges exceeding 1,500 meters, thick frontal armor that turned aside most Allied anti-tank weapons, excellent optics. The Zeiss TZF-12 periscopic sight gave German gunners clarity American tankers envied. They trained to recognize silhouettes in a heartbeat. The high-riding profile of an M4 Sherman with its 75mm gun, the quick little M5 Stuart light tank, even the up-armored M4A3E2 Jumbo with its thicker glacis plate and rounded hull. Every shape had a meaning. Every silhouette told them how to fight, where to aim, how much danger they faced. The Sherman was tall, vertical sides, boxy turret. The gun barrel, whether 75mm or the later 76mm, lacked the pronounced muzzle brake of German guns. The suspension was distinctive. Vertical volute spring suspension early in the war, with paired road wheels and visible return rollers. Later models had horizontal volute spring suspension, still easily identifiable. German recognition manuals included detailed drawings, silhouettes at various angles, firing tables showing vulnerable points. The Sherman's weaknesses were well documented. Thin side armor, ammunition stored in the hull sponsons, prone to catastrophic fire when penetrated. A profile so tall it was difficult to hide. But intelligence reports from the front are changing. January brings scattered mentions of something new. February brings more details. A gun that does not belong on a Sherman. An armor profile that seems wrong. Crews who survive encounters in the Ruhr River sector speak of impacts they have never felt before. Penetrations at ranges that should not be possible. The reports are fragmentary, censored by fatigue and trauma. But the word spreads faster than official channels. Something is coming, something different. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today. Battleworthy has heard the rumors. In a command briefing 3 days ago, his battalion commander mentioned reports of a new American heavy tank. Few details, no recognition photographs, no tactical guidance, The commander seemed uncertain himself. Perhaps it was disinformation, perhaps American propaganda, or perhaps, the commander admitted in a moment of rare honesty, the Americans had finally built something to match the Panther. The thought hung in the cold air of the makeshift command post. No one spoke for several seconds. Then the briefing continued. Hold Cologne, delay the American advance, buy time for civilians to evacuate, fight with honor, die if necessary. Back in late 1942, while German tankers were perfecting their craft against Soviet armor on the frozen steppes, American engineers started a program wrapped in secrecy. The designation was T26. The goal was direct and unambiguous. Build a tank that could end the myth of German invulnerability. Build a tank that could kill a Tiger or Panther from the front at normal combat ranges. Build it in numbers. Build it fast. The project was born from necessity and humiliation. In North Africa, American M3 Lee and M4 Sherman tanks had faced German Panzer IIIs and IVs with mixed results. The Sherman was adequate against these medium tanks. Its 75mm gun could penetrate their armor at reasonable ranges. But intelligence reports from the Eastern Front painted a darker picture. The Germans were fielding new designs, heavy tanks. The Tiger I had appeared near Leningrad in September of 1942, 56 tons, 88mm gun, armor up to 100mm thick. Against this, the Sherman was hopelessly outmatched. American tank doctrine, formulated before the war by officers who had never seen modern combat, held that tanks should not fight other tanks. That was the job of tank destroyers. Lightly armored, mobile vehicles with powerful guns. Tanks were for infantry support, breakthrough operations, exploitation. The doctrine was clean on paper. In reality, it was catastrophic. Tank destroyers could not be everywhere. When Shermans met Tigers or Panthers, the result was predictable. Burning American tanks, dead crews, shattered morale. Detroit Arsenal in Warren, Michigan became the center of American heavy tank development. Fisher Body, a division of General Motors, contributed engineering expertise. Grand Blanc Tank Arsenal in Michigan prepared for production. Dozens of subcontractors received orders for components. Everything was compartmentalized. Turret castings from one plant, transmissions from another, suspensions from a third. The goal was to prevent any single factory from understanding the complete design. Security was absolute. Workers were told they were building parts for existing tanks. Shipping crates carried false labels. Maintenance gear, spare parts for M4 Shermans, anything to hide the truth. The engineering challenges were immense. American tanks had always prioritized reliability over firepower. The Sherman used a radial aircraft engine or a Ford GAA Vate. Both were proven, reliable designs, but they were designed for 30-ton tanks, not the 46-ton monster the T26 was becoming. The transmission had to be completely redesigned. The suspension system, initially based on vertical volute springs like the Sherman, was replaced with torsion bars. The armor layout required new casting techniques. American foundries had never produced single-piece cast turrets on this scale. The 90mm M3 gun changes everything about American firepower. It is adapted from the 9mm M1 anti-aircraft gun, a weapon developed to shoot down high-altitude bombers. The ballistics are exceptional. The barrel is 73 calibers long, meaning the barrel length is 73 times the bore diameter. For a 90mm gun, that is 6.57 meters of rifled steel. The breech mechanism is semi-automatic, ejecting spent casings and opening for the next round. The chamber is enormous compared to the Sherman's 75mm gun. It holds more propellant, much more. When the gun fires, the physics are brutal. The 40-pound M82 armor-piercing capped ballistic capped round exits the muzzle at 2,800 feet per second. That is 853 meters per second. The kinetic energy is staggering. At 1,000 yards, The shell carries enough energy to punch through 8.5 inches of rolled homogeneous armor sloped at 30 degrees from vertical. German Panther frontal armor measures 80 millimeters at 55 degrees. The math is unforgiving. The 90mm round will penetrate, guaranteed. But numbers on paper mean nothing if the ammunition fails in combat. American ordnance officers remember the Isigny tests of 1944. Sherman tanks firing at captured German tanks showed disappointing results. American armor-piercing ammunition that performed well against American test plates sometimes failed against actual German armor. The problem was metallurgy. German armor used different steel alloys, different hardening processes. The cemented face-hardened plates on Panthers were harder than anything American foundries produced. American shells, designed and tested against softer steel, sometimes shattered on impact instead of penetrating. Testing at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland becomes exhaustive to the point of obsession. Engineers ship captured Panthers from Europe specifically for these trials. Not just one, multiple vehicles. They need to know if the 90mm gun will work against actual German steel, not just American test plates. The tests run through the summer and fall of 1944. Different ammunition types, different ranges, different impact angles, high-velocity armor-piercing capped, armor-piercing capped, ballistic capped. Each variant is tested dozens of times. The photographs from Aberdeen tell an unambiguous story. Clean penetrations through Panther frontal armor at ranges exceeding 1,200 yards. Catastrophic failures of turret rings where armor is thinner. Ammunition cooking off inside crew compartments, blowing hatches open from internal pressure. The gun works. The ammunition works. For the first time since encountering German heavy tanks, American engineers have a weapon that can fight on equal terms. Production wraps the entire program in operational security that borders on paranoia. Components ship separately. Turret castings travel by rail from Fisher body plants in Michigan to final assembly facilities, but the manifests list them as industrial equipment. Transmissions ship from Allison plants with documentation describing them as power units for construction machinery. Even within the factories, workers operate on need-to-know basis. A machinist producing transmission gears does not know what vehicle they fit. A welder working on hull sections does not know the complete armor layout. Crews train at Fort Knox in Kentucky, far from the ports where German spies might observe embarkation. The training area is restricted. Guards patrol the perimeter. Aerial photography of the base is forbidden. The men selected are told only that they will crew a new tank. They are sworn to secrecy. Letters home are censored more strictly than usual. Families are told their sons are training on improved Shermans. The lie is necessary. The stakes are too high. By January of 1945, the first 20 T26 E3 tanks are ready. They ship from East Coast ports in crates labeled as tank recovery vehicles. The vessels travel in convoy, protected by destroyer escorts. U-boats are still active in the Atlantic. The cargo is too valuable to risk. The voyage takes 10 days. Rough seas, cold rain. The tanks arrive at the Belgian port of Antwerp on January 15th. They are unloaded at night, moved immediately to a secure depot near Aachen, a German city captured by American forces in October. They are distributed to the 3rd and 9th Armoured Divisions. Each division receives 10 tanks. The decision is tactical. Rather than concentrating all 20 in a single heavy tank battalion, they will be spread across existing Sherman companies, 1 Pershing per company. The orders are explicit and detailed. Fold them quietly into Sherman formations. Do not advertise their presence. Engage only when facing heavy German armor. Panthers, Tigers, King Tigers if encountered. Let the surprise do the work. Let German crews wonder what hit them. The men chosen to crew these machines are not green replacements fresh from stateside training. 3rd Armoured Division, known as Spearhead Division, sends their best, tank commanders, with flawless records. Men who have fought through France and Belgium without losing a tank. Gunners who can shoot fast and straight under pressure. Loaders who never fumble even when shells are exploding around them. drivers who can navigate terrain at speed while under fire, radio operators who keep communications clear in the chaos of combat. They receive accelerated training on the new transmission at the Aachen depot. The Torque-matic transmission is different from the Sherman's manual gearbox. It is automatic, using hydraulic torque converters. The driver controls it with a simple lever: forward, neutral, reverse, no clutch, no shifting. In theory, this makes the tank easier to drive. In practice, it takes getting used to. The drivers spend hours practicing, starting, stopping, backing up at speed. The tank weighs 46 tons. Momentum is significant. Each crew fires 28 rounds through the main gun to learn the flash and smoke characteristics. The 90mm gun produces more flash than the 75mm Sherman gun. Much more. The muzzle blast is visible from hundreds of yards away, even in daylight. At night, it is blinding. The smoke is thick and acrid. It fills the turret despite the ventilation system. The fumes sting the eyes and throat. Crews learn to breathe through their noses, keep their mouths closed, blink frequently to clear tears. The recoil alone rattles men to their bones. When the gun fires, the entire tank shudders. The floor plates vibrate. Equipment rattles in storage bins. The noise inside the turret is beyond description. Even with headsets and helmets, the concussion is felt as much as heard. Gunners learn to brace themselves against the recoil pad. Loaders learn to steady themselves against the turret wall. The 40-pound shells are heavy. Loading requires technique. Grip the base, guide it into the breech, step back, clear the recoil path. The process takes seconds but feels longer under pressure, but the power is undeniable. During firing tests, the crews watch their shells impact German armor plates set up on the range. The penetrations are clean. Entry holes the size of a fist. Exit holes, when the shell passes completely through, are larger and surrounded by petalled steel. Spalling inside the target produces shrapnel that would kill everyone in a crew compartment. The instructors show them photographs from Aberdeen. What the 90mm does to a Panther. What it does to a Tiger. The message is clear. You have a weapon that can fight back. Use it. Staff Sergeant Robert Early commands one such crew. He is 24 years old, from Fountain, Minnesota. He enlisted in 1942, trained at Fort Benning, shipped to England in 43. He fought through Normandy, across France, into Belgium. His Sherman was hit twice. Both times, he and his crew escaped, luck and skill in equal measure. When his battalion commander asks for volunteers to crew the new Pershing tanks, Early raises his hand without hesitation. Better armour, better gun, better chance of survival. His gunner is Corporal Clarence Smoyer, 21 years old, from Lehighton, Pennsylvania, a steel town in the Appalachians. Smoyer grew up around factories and mines, men who worked with their hands. His father was a machinist. Clarence learned mechanical aptitude early. When he was drafted in 1943, the Army saw his test scores and sent him to armour training. He qualified as a gunner. He is good at it. Very good. Quick target acquisition. Steady trigger control. No hesitation under fire. The loader is Private First Class John DeRiggy, from Scranton, Pennsylvania, 23 years old. He traded with a French tanker for a leather helmet early in the war. It makes him instantly recognizable. The helmet is brown, worn, with visible stitching. DeRiggy wears it instead of the standard American tanker helmet. No one questions it. Superstition runs deep among combat troops. If the helmet has kept him alive this long, why change? The driver is Technician 5th Grade William McVeigh, called Woody by everyone, from Chicago. He is quiet, competent, unflappable. He can drive through rubble at night without headlights. He can reverse at full speed if the situation demands it. His hands on the controls are steady even when shells are landing around them. Radio operator Homer Davis, nicknamed Smokey, completes the crew. He wears a knit tanker's hood under his helmet. His voice on the intercom is calm regardless of circumstances. They name their tank Eagle 7. The designation comes from their company identifier, E Company. Vehicle number 7, Eagle 7. They paint it in small letters below the bow machine gun port. Some crews paint elaborate names and artwork on their tanks. Eagle 7 is understated, professional. The crew likes it that way. On February 25th, near the Ruhr River, a T26 E3 called Fireball engages German positions at the town of Elsdorf. The crew commander is Lieutenant, name lost to incomplete records. The engagement starts well. Fireball is positioned to provide overwatch for infantry clearing buildings. The town is burning. Smoke reduces visibility. German resistance is scattered but determined. Panzerfaust teams. Machine gun nests. A few artillery pieces firing direct lay. Then the crew makes a mistake. They position the tank next to a burning building. The flames silhouette them against the night. They become visible for hundreds of yards. A Tiger tank, hull down behind rubble 300 feet away, has been waiting for exactly this mistake. The German commander orders his gunner to fire. The 88mm K36 gun erupts 3 times in rapid succession. The first shot penetrates the turret through the machine gun port in the mantlet. The armour there is only 4 inches thick with a hole cut for the coaxial 30 caliber Browning. The shell enters the turret at waist height. It kills the gunner and loader instantly. Shrapnel and overpressure. Both men die without making a sound. The second shot strikes the 90mm gun barrel itself. The impact distorts the barrel and causes the round chambered in the breech to detonate. The explosion blows the breech block backward. Fragments wound the commander. The third shot takes off the commander's cupola, the armoured observation dome on top of the turret. It spins away like a frisbee and lands 20 feet from the tank. The driver and radio operator, seated in the hull below the turret, are unhurt but trapped. Smoke fills the compartment. They cannot see, cannot breathe. The driver finds the hatch by feel, opens it, crawls out. The radio operator follows. Both men roll off the tank and into cover. Behind them, ammunition begins to cook off. Shells stored in the turret racks ignite from the heat. Each detonation rocks the tank. Flames shoot from the hatches. The crew pays in blood for their mistake. But Fireball is not abandoned. This is important. Division maintenance locates the tank the next morning. German forces have withdrawn during the night. The hulk sits cold and blackened. Maintenance crews assess the damage. The turret is burned out. The gun is destroyed. The engine is intact. The hull structure is sound. They decide to recover it. A tank recovery vehicle tows Fireball back to the division maintenance depot at Düren, 10 miles behind the lines. There, over the next 5 days, specialized teams rebuild the tank. A replacement turret arrives from Belgium. A replacement gun. New fire control equipment. New ammunition racks. The burned interior is cleaned, tested, repainted. On March 1st, less than a week after being knocked out, Fireball returns to combat with a new crew. The message to German crews, when they eventually learn of this, will be clear and demoralizing. These are not prototypes. They are not experiments. They are fighting machines backed by an industrial system that can repair and replace them faster than Germany can destroy them. Sergeant Nick Maschlonik commands Pershing No. 40, also part of 3rd Armoured Division. On February 27th, 2 days after Fireball is hit, his tank engages targets in the same sector near Elsdorf. The town is now fully under American control, but German tanks are withdrawing eastward along the road network. Intelligence reports at least 3 armoured vehicles moving toward the Rhine. Maschlonik's Pershing is positioned on high ground overlooking the road, range to target, 1,000 yards. The German vehicles are moving, but slowly, probably low on fuel. The lead vehicle is a Tiger, hull down in a prepared position. Maschlonik orders his gunner to engage. The Pershing is also moving, crossing uneven ground, to get a better angle. Firing on the move is difficult. The gyrostabilizer helps keep the gun oriented, but precision suffers. Most tank doctrine calls for stopping to fire, but Maschlonik does not want to give the Tiger time to react. The gunner pulls the trigger. The 90mm gun fires. The shell crosses 1,000 yards in under 2 seconds. It strikes the Tiger's frontal armour, Penetration. Mashlonik orders another shot, then another, then a fourth. All 4 rounds hit within seconds. The Tiger is dug in and cannot maneuver. It burns. Then 3 more German armoured vehicles appear on the road to Mashlonik's right. They are leaving the town. Probably thought the road was clear. Mashlonik sees them at about 800 yards. They are exposed, rear quarters visible. He waits. Tactical patience. Let them commit. Let them get into a position where they cannot retreat quickly. When all 3 are on the open road, he gives the order. Fire. 1 shell each. The first vehicle is hit in the engine compartment. It stops, begins to smoke. The second takes a round through the rear hull. Ammunition explodes. The turret separates from the hull. The third vehicle tries to accelerate but is hit before it can gain speed. Clean kill. Like shooting ducks, Mashlonik will say later in his after-action report. The phrase is repeated in briefings. It spreads through the division. Morale boost. The Pershing works. It works very well. The effectiveness is not luck. It is design meeting execution. The gun performs as tested. The ammunition penetrates as predicted. The crew training pays off. Mashlonik's gunner has been firing tank cannons since North Africa. He knows his craft. The loader is experienced. The whole crew moves with practiced efficiency. They are not learning on the job. They are applying lessons paid for in blood over 2 years of combat. March 6th arrives with cold rain and heavy cloud cover. Cologne is Germany's 3rd largest city. Before the war, it had 770,000 residents. Now, after 262 Allied bombing raids, much of the city is uninhabitable. The cathedral still stands, its blackened Gothic spires visible through smoke and haze for miles. It is a navigation landmark. American forces orient their advance on it. Take the cathedral, take the city. The Rhine flows behind German defensive lines. Most units have already withdrawn across the river. Engineers have blown the bridges. But some units remain. Rear guards, fanatics, men with nowhere else to go. The cathedral is a symbol. Sparing it was not an Allied priority, but bomber crews tried to avoid direct hits. The structure is too historically significant. Dropping 500-pound bombs on a medieval cathedral would be terrible propaganda. So the raids focused on industrial areas, rail yards, factories, residential districts. The cathedral took damage from near misses and shrapnel, but the main structure survived. Now it sits in a wasteland of rubble, an island of Gothic stone in a sea of destruction. 2 M4 Sherman tanks advance down Comedienstrasse toward the cathedral square. They are from F Company, 3rd Armoured Division. Supporting infantry and M3 half-tracks trail behind. The street is choked with debris, bricks, twisted steel, collapsed building fronts. The lead Sherman is commanded by a lieutenant named Clarence Kellner. He is 24 years old. This is his first month commanding a tank. His previous assignment was as a platoon leader in an infantry company. The transfer to armour was recent. He is competent but learning. Behind Kellner's Sherman is another commanded by Corporal John Gianluca, 19 years old. He has been in combat since Normandy. His Sherman is a late production model with the 76mm gun, better than the 75 but still inadequate against heavy German armour. Both Shermans are advancing cautiously. The infantry ahead has reported that the street is clear, but everyone has learned not to trust initial reports too much. Cologne is a maze. Buildings with intact facades hide collapsed interiors. Basements connect through improvised tunnels, the Germans call mouse trails. Enemy infantry can appear anywhere. Kellner's Sherman reaches a point where rubble completely blocks the street. A building has collapsed across the roadway. There is no path forward. He radios for a dozer tank. Someone needs to clear this before the column can advance. His Sherman stops. Engine idling. Turret traversing slowly, scanning for threats. The crew is alert but not expecting immediate contact. They have been advancing all morning without encountering significant resistance. Most German forces have pulled back. 200 yards ahead, hidden in the entrance to the train station tunnel, Battleworthy's Panther waits. The position is perfect. Hull down, frontal armour toward the enemy. Gun pre-aimed at the choke point where American tanks must pass. Battleworthy has been here for an hour. He watched the American infantry advance, watched them clear buildings, did not fire, waited for the tanks. That is his mission. Kill American armor. Through his periscope, Battleworthy watches Kellner's Sherman stop. It is at an angle, not quite hull down. The turret is visible. The gun mantlet, the commander's hatch. Range, approximately 350 yards, an easy shot for a trained crew. Battleworthy orders his gunner to prepare. Load armor-piercing, aim for the turret front, kill the crew, the gunner acknowledges. The loader already has the shell ready, the gun is on target, everyone is calm, they have done this before. Battleworthy gives the order. Fire. The Panther's 75mm gun erupts. The shell crosses the distance in a fraction of a second. It strikes Kellner's Sherman on the gun mantlet. The impact is precise. Both hits land within inches of each other, just above where the driver sits. The penetration is immediate. The shell passes through the mantlet and into the crew compartment. The driver is killed instantly. Shrapnel decapitates him. The gunner takes fragments in the chest and face. He dies within seconds, drowning in his own blood. Kellner is in the commander's cupola, standing with his head and shoulders above the turret. The overpressure from the penetration slams him backward. He looks down. His left leg below the knee is gone. Severed cleanly by a piece of shell casing or mantlet armor, it is impossible to say which. The stump smokes. Blood pumps in rhythmic spurts. He tries to scream, but no sound comes. Shock. The Panther fires again. Second shot. This one strikes the Sherman's track. The track breaks. The tank is immobilized. Kellner begins to crawl out of the cupola. Other crew members are already moving. The loader, somehow uninjured, climbs out first. The radio operator follows. Both men jump from the tank. Kellner gets his torso out. Other soldiers are running toward him. A sergeant named Rooney, a medic. They grab Kellner, pull him off the engine deck, carry him to cover behind a pile of rubble. The medic works fast, tourniquets the leg above the severed point, pressure bandages, morphine. But Kellner is in full shock. His blood pressure is plummeting. The leg was severed at the femoral artery. Too much blood loss. Too fast. He dies within 5 minutes. The medic keeps working even after Kellner stops breathing. Keep trying. But there is nothing more to do. Corporal John Gianluca's Sherman, the second tank in the column, backs up immediately. The driver throws the transmission into reverse and accelerates. The Sherman has good reverse speed for a tracked vehicle, about 10 miles per hour. It gets around the corner and into cover. Gianluca escapes. Years later, his son will find details of this engagement online, will learn his father was there, will understand why his father never spoke much about the war. Signal Corps cameraman Jim Bates is 2 floors up in a building, overlooking the intersection. He is 30 years old, from Colorado Springs. He has been filming the advance through Cologne since yesterday. His job is to document combat operations, provide footage for training films and newsreels. He has filmed destroyed buildings, surrendering Germans, American infantry entering the city. Now he is filming something unplanned, the destruction of an American tank. His camera is a Bell & Howell Filmo 70mm model. Spring-wound, reliable. He has been using it since North Africa. The camera is already rolling when Kellner's Sherman is hit. Bates captures the smoke, the frantic movements of the crew, Kellner being pulled from the turret. He keeps filming. That is his job. Document everything. The good and the bad, the victories and the casualties. Now Bates hears something. Tank engine. Loud, close. He pans the camera toward the sound. Eagle 7 appears around the corner. The Pershing. Low profile, broad turret. The 90mm gun with its distinctive muzzle brake. Bates recognizes it. He filmed these tanks at the training depot near Aachen. He knows what they can do. He keeps the camera steady, keeps filming. Eagle 7 receives the radio call. F Company commander's voice. Urgent. A Panther near the cathedral just knocked out Kellner's Sherman. E Company needs to respond. Engage the Panther, Early acknowledges. His crew moves from the parallel street where they were waiting in reserve. They do not know the Panther's exact position. No one has seen it fire from cover. They only know the general direction. Somewhere ahead. Somewhere near the train station. Smoyer peers through his periscope sight, searching. The street is full of smoke and dust. Visibility is poor. McVeigh navigates carefully. The Pershing weighs 46 tons. It can crush rubble, but navigation requires care. Homer Davis monitors the radio net. Multiple voices. Infantry reporting movement. Artillery requesting fire missions. It is controlled chaos. DeRiggi grips an armor-piercing shell, waiting. The loader's station in a tank is the most physically demanding. Shells weigh 40 pounds. Loading and reloading for extended periods is exhausting. But DeRiggi is ready. They turn the corner onto Marselenstrasse. The street runs parallel to the cathedral square. Ahead, through the smoke, something is moving. A shape, dark, angular. McVeigh eases off the accelerator. The Pershing slows but does not stop. Early's voice on the intercom. Contact front. Smoyer rotates the turret manually. The power traverse is fast, but fine adjustments still require hand control. He is looking for the target. Scanning. Then he sees it. Range. 110 meters. The Panther is there. 350 feet away. Gun tube pointing almost directly at them. The Germans have not seen them yet. Or have they? The Panther is not moving, not firing. Why? Smoyer does not have time to wonder. He has center mass in his sight. Pershing is still moving forward. McVeigh is bringing them into the intersection. American doctrine says stop to fire. Accuracy improves when stationary. But there is no time. If the Panther shoots first, they die. For Battleworthy, everything happens in a compressed fragment of time. He hears the engine, looks through his periscope, sees a tank entering the intersection. His first thought, another Sherman. But something is wrong. The shape is wrong. The silhouette does not match his recognition training. This tank is low. The hull is horizontal. The turret is massive. The gun has a large muzzle brake. The running gear is completely unfamiliar. Torsion bar suspension with large road wheels. No return rollers. This is not a Sherman. Could it be German? In the chaos of urban combat, identification errors happen. Both sides have stories of friendly fire. Panthers destroyed by German 88mm flak guns. Shermans hit by American tank destroyers. Battleworthy has heard rumours of new German. Secret weapons. Jet aircraft. V-2 rockets. Perhaps a new tank? The Reich is desperate. Perhaps they have fielded a prototype. The thought lasts a fraction of a second. Hesitation. Fatal hesitation. Battleworthy does not give the order to fire. Smoyer has no such confusion. He sees a Panther. Enemy. Threat. Kill it. The reticle settles on the Panther's hull. Not a perfect sight picture, moving platform, but good enough. He squeezes the trigger. The world explodes. The 90mm gun erupts with a flash that lights up the entire street. Inside the turret, the noise is catastrophic. Even with headsets and the intercom system, the crew feels the concussion in their chests. The recoil rocks the entire 46-ton tank backward. Smoke and cordite fumes fill the turret, despite the ventilation blower running at full speed. Smoyer's eyes water immediately. He blinks hard, trying to clear his vision. His hands stay on the controls. Muscle memory. The T-33 armor-piercing shell crosses 110 meters in less than 0.2 of a second. It is traveling at 2,800 feet per second. The impact on the Panther's hull, just below the gun shield where the armor is thinnest on the mantlet assembly, is devastating. The shell punches through. The hardened steel core penetrates the outer armor plate, passes through the gun mantlet's internal mechanism, and enters the fighting compartment. Inside Battleworthy's Panther, the world becomes fire and metal. The penetrating shell does not explode. Armor-piercing rounds are solid shot, but the kinetic energy transfer is enormous. When the shell enters the crew compartment at nearly 3,000 feet per second, everything in its path becomes a projectile. Spalling. Fragments of the inner armor face separate and spray through the interior like shotgun pellets. The gunner, seated directly in the path, takes dozens of these fragments. He is killed before he can register what happened. The shell continues through the fighting compartment and strikes ammunition stored in racks along the hull side. German tanks store shells vertically in racks. The impact detonates one, then another. The propellant charges ignite. 75mm shells begin cooking off in a chain reaction. Each detonation adds to the pressure building inside the sealed turret. Flames erupt from every seam and hatch. The temperature inside spikes to over 1,500 degrees in seconds. McVeigh does exactly what he is trained to do. He accelerates. The Pershing surges forward into the intersection. A moving target is harder to hit. If the Panther has time to return fire, movement might save them. The Ford Gaff engine roars, 500 horsepower pushing 46 tons. Not fast by sports car standards, but impressive for a tracked vehicle. They cross into full exposure. Now they are committed. De Riggy already has the breech open. He lifts another 40-pound shell from the ready rack. These are stored horizontally in the Pershing, unlike the vertical storage in German tanks. He slides the shell into the breech with practiced efficiency. The semi-automatic breech closes. The gun is ready. The whole process takes perhaps 4 seconds. Under fire, it feels like an eternity. Smoyer adjusts his aim. The Pershing has stopped now, roughly in the center of the intersection. The turret continues rotating, tracking the Panther. Smoke from the first hit obscures details, but the target is still there, still visible. He sees movement, hatches opening, crew bailing out. He fires again. The second shell strikes the Panther on its side, just behind the forward hull armor. The angle is nearly perpendicular, perfect geometry for penetration. The shell enters the crew compartment through the sponson, where ammunition is stored. More shells detonate. The overpressure blows the turret hatches completely open. Flames shoot upward 15 feet. Black smoke boils from every opening. Battleworthy reacts, with the survival instinct of an experienced tanker. When fire starts inside a tank, you have seconds to get out. Maybe 10 seconds. Maybe less. Ammunition will cook off. Fuel will ignite. The tank becomes an oven. He grabs the hatch handle above his head, yanks it open, pulls himself up through the commander's cupola. His hands are already burned from touching hot metal. He does not notice. He gets his shoulders through the hatch. His legs follow. He rolls off the turret and hits the ground on the far side of the Panther's hull, away from the American tank. Training. Always exit away from the enemy, minimize exposure. 3 other crew members follow him, the loader, the driver, the radio operator. One of them is on fire, his uniform smoldering. He rolls on the ground, trying to extinguish himself. American infantry has moved up with Eagle 7. They are positioned in doorways and behind rubble piles. They see the German crew bailing out. Automatic weapons open fire. Tracers. 30 caliber machine gun fire from the infantry's M1919 Brownings. The rounds kick up dust and chips of brick. The Germans run, stumbling, falling, getting up, running again. 3 make it to cover. They disappear into a basement entrance. They will be captured later that day. 1 is wounded but survives. Battleworthy himself is unharmed except for the burns on his hands. But the gunner is too slow. He is positioned deeper in the turret than the other crew members. His station is below and to the right of the commander's position. To escape, he has to climb up past equipment, past the gun breech, to reach the commander's hatch. The loader's hatch on the Panther's left side is blocked by flames. The commander's hatch is the only exit. He claws his way upward. His hands grasp the hatch rim. His head and shoulders emerge into daylight. He can see the sky, Gothic spires of the cathedral in the distance. Smoyer fires the 3rd time. The shell strikes the Panther's turret ring. This is the rotating joint where the turret sits on the hull. The armor here is thinner, 30mm in some places. The shell penetrates and detonates something inside, probably hydraulic fluid for the turret traverse mechanism. The fluid ignites instantly. A fireball erupts from inside the turret. The gunner, halfway out of the hatch, is engulfed. He slips back inside. The flames consume him. His body will be found the next day by American Graves registration personnel. Burned beyond recognition. 2 floors above, Bates's camera keeps rolling. The Bell and Howell has a spring-wound motor. Each winding gives about 20 seconds of filming time. Bates has to rewind constantly. But he has captured the entire sequence. The Pershing entering the intersection. The first impact. The Panther beginning to burn. The crew bailing out. The second impact. The third. The flames towering from the hatches. The penetration holes glowing red-hot from internal fire. He keeps filming even as the concussions from the 90mm gun shake his position. Dust falls from the ceiling. The building he is in has been bombed multiple times. It is structurally unsound. But he stays. This footage is too important. The camera captures details that Smoyer and his crew cannot see from their position. The German gunner trying to escape. The moment the third shell hits, the way the flames intensify, Bates pans out. The cathedral spires rise behind the burning Panther. The juxtaposition is striking. Medieval architecture, modern warfare, destruction and survival. The footage will be developed in a field laboratory within 48 hours. It will be edited and sent to newsreel companies within a week. It will appear in American movie theaters by the end of March. Millions of people will see it. For audiences in America, the footage is proof. Proof that American tanks can fight German tanks on equal terms. Proof that the Pershing works. The narrator on the newsreel describes the engagement. New American heavy tank, 90mm gun, destroyed a German Panther in seconds. The footage is dramatic, clear, undeniable. It plays in theaters across the country alongside cartoons and feature films. Morale boost. The boys have the equipment they need. Victory is coming, but the footage travels in other directions too. Copies are captured by German intelligence within weeks. How this happens is unclear. Perhaps a downed American aircraft carrying courier mail. Perhaps a spy network still operating in occupied territories. Perhaps simply a neutral country sharing information. The routes do not matter. By early April, German tank training schools have the footage. Instructors show it to new crews. This is what you may face. This is the American heavy tank. Study it. Learn to recognize it. Learn to kill it before it kills you. But recognition is only useful if there is doctrine to accompany it. And there is no doctrine. German recognition charts have no entry for the Pershing. The silhouette is too new. Training manuals still claim American guns cannot penetrate Tiger armor from the front at combat ranges. This was true in 1944. It is not true in 1945, but the manuals have not been updated. No one has time to update them. The Reich is dying. Printers' ink and paper are needed for ration cards and propaganda leaflets, not technical manuals for tank crews who will be dead within weeks. On the line, experienced German crews begin reporting encounters they cannot explain. A Panzer IV commander, captured near Paderborn in late March, describes engaging what he thought was a Sherman at 1,200 meters. The Sherman should not have been able to return effective fire at that range. German doctrine was to engage Shermans at long range where the American 75mm gun was ineffective. But this Sherman fired back. The shell struck his Panther's frontal armor. Penetration. Clean through. The driver was killed. The radio operator lost both legs. The tank was abandoned. When interrogators showed the commander photographs of a Pershing, he nodded immediately. Yes, that was the tank. He had never seen one before, thought it was a Sherman variant. How many of these tanks did the Americans have? The commander wanted to know. The interrogator did not answer. The question hung in the air. The psychological impact was immediate. If the Americans could field a tank this effective, how many others? What else were they hiding? Intelligence scrambles to gather information. Prisoner interrogations focus on the new American tank. What do you know about it? Have you encountered it? What are its weaknesses? The answers are fragmentary. Most captured tankers have not seen a Pershing. Those who have rarely survived the encounter long enough to learn anything useful. One Tiger commander reports hitting a Pershing from 400 meters with an 88mm round. The shell struck the frontal armor and deflected. No penetration. The Pershing returned fire and killed his Tiger with a single shot. This report is significant. It suggests the Pershing's armor is comparable to German heavy tanks, not invulnerable, but strong enough to survive hits at certain angles. German intelligence officers calculate the armor thickness based on the deflection, 4 inches of sloped armor, effective thickness against a perpendicular hit, approximately 180 millimeters, better than a Panther. Not quite as good as a Tiger, but close. Combined with the 90mm gun, this makes the Pershing a formidable opponent. Panzer Brigade commanders request updated intelligence documents. Gunnery instructors demand new target data. Where should we aim? What are the weak points? The requests go unanswered, not because the information is classified, but because no one knows. The Pershing is too new. German intelligence has not had time to conduct detailed analysis. Captured examples do not exist. The Americans do not abandon their tanks. If a Pershing is disabled, it is recovered or destroyed in place. German recovery teams never get their hands on an intact example. Field manual updates are drafted but never distributed. The distribution network is collapsing. Roads are bombed. Rail lines are cut. Fuel shortages prevent courier vehicles from traveling. Even if updated manuals existed, there is no way to get them to frontline units. Company commanders make do with verbal briefings. The American heavy tank has a 90mm gun. It can penetrate our frontal armor, engage from ambush if possible, avoid long-range duels, aim for the hull sides or rear. Standard anti-tank tactics, nothing revolutionary, but tactics only work if you see the enemy first. By March 7th, 4 T26E3 tanks support the capture of the Ludendorff Bridge at Remagen. This is one of the last intact bridges across the Rhine. German engineers were supposed to blow it. Demolition charges were placed, but the detonation failed, or was delayed, or sabotaged. The exact reason remains disputed. What matters is the bridge stood. American forces saw an opportunity. Take it. Now, 9th Armored Division's Combat Command B launches an immediate assault. Infantry leads. Engineers cut wires to remaining demolition charges. German defenders fire machine guns and mortars. Artillery shells impact on both sides of the bridge. The structure is fragile. Bomb damage has weakened it. Every explosion risks collapse. But if it holds, American forces can cross the Rhine without conducting an opposed river assault. The strategic value is incalculable. The Pershings provide covering fire for infantry. They cannot cross the bridge immediately. The structure is too weak. Engineers calculate weight limits. A Sherman weighs 30 tons. Acceptable risk. A Pershing weighs 46 tons. Unacceptable. The bridge might collapse. So the Pershings stay on the west bank. They position themselves to engage German forces on the opposite shore. Long-range fire support, suppression, psychological pressure. German defenders see them. Low profile, large guns, not Shermans. Reports go up the chain. The Americans are using heavy tanks at Remagen. This information reaches higher headquarters within hours. Field Marshal Kesselring's staff takes note. If the Americans commit heavy tanks to the bridgehead, they are serious about expanding it. Reinforcements are needed. But there are no reinforcements. Panzer divisions on the Western Front are shells. 2/3 of their authorized strength is gone, destroyed, captured, deserted. The divisions that remain are under strength and out of fuel. The Pershings wait 5 days before crossing the Rhine. Engineers construct pontoon bridges and bring ferries up. Heavy vehicles cross on barges. The Pershings are loaded one at a time. The process is slow, careful, but by March 12th, all 4 Pershings attached to 9th Armoured Division are east of the Rhine. They continue the advance into Germany. The technical reality of the Pershing, when German intelligence finally assembles a complete profile, is sobering for crews who learn the details. Single piece cast turret. Fisher Body produced these turrets in their plant in Grand Rapids, Michigan. The casting process was new to American industry. Previous tanks used welded turret construction. Casting allows for more complex shapes, better armor angles, fewer weak points where welds might fail. The turret weighs 7 tons. It is the largest single casting produced for an American tank up to that time. The Ford GAF V8 engine produces 500 horsepower at 2,600 RPM. It is a modified version of the GAA engine used in late production Shermans. The main difference is height. The GAF is more compact vertically, allowing for a lower hull profile. But the power output is identical. This is a problem. The Pershing weighs 16 tons more than a Sherman. Power-to-weight ratio suffers. The Sherman has 16.5 horsepower per ton. The Pershing has 10.9 horsepower per ton. Mobility, especially in rough terrain, is limited. American tankers notice this immediately. The Pershing is slower to accelerate, struggles on steep grades, burns more fuel per mile. The operational range is 92 miles on internal fuel. The Sherman can do 120 miles. For rapid advances across open country, the Sherman is better. But for deliberate attacks against fortified positions defended by heavy German armor, the Pershing is superior. The trade-off is accepted. Different tools for different jobs. Power traverse swings the turret a full 360 degrees in approximately 15 seconds. This is competitive with German tanks. The Panther can rotate its turret in 15 seconds using hydraulic power. The Tiger takes about a minute using hand cranks, or much faster with electric drive if the tank is stationary. The Pershing's traverse speed gives American gunners a fighting chance in encounter battles where the first accurate shot often decides the outcome. Gyrostabilization is an American innovation that German tanks lack entirely. The stabilizer uses a gyroscope to detect turret movement. When the tank is moving over uneven terrain, the gun barrel pitches up and down. The stabilizer tries to compensate, keeping the gun oriented on the target. It does not work perfectly. Accuracy while moving is still poor compared to shooting from a halt, but it helps. American doctrine is to fire on the move only in emergencies. The capability exists even if it is not preferred. Optics are crucial for tank combat. German Zeiss optics have a reputation for exceptional quality. Panther and Tiger gun sights provide clear magnified views of targets at long range. American optics improved steadily throughout the war. By 1945, American sights are comparable. The Pershing uses a M71 periscopic sight. Magnification is adjustable. The glass is good quality. Clarity is excellent. German tankers who examine captured American tanks after the war admit the optics are competitive, not superior, but adequate. That is high praise from men who prided themselves on technical superiority. Inside the Pershing there is space to work. German tank design prioritized armor and firepower over crew comfort. Panther and Tiger interiors are cramped. Equipment is packed tightly. Moving around is difficult. The Pershing has more internal volume. The turret is spacious enough for the gunner, loader, and commander to move without constantly bumping into each other. Ammunition is stored in wet stowage racks. Each shell sits in a small container filled with water and ethylene glycol. If a shell is hit by enemy fire, the liquid helps prevent ignition. The system is not perfect, but it reduces fire risk compared to dry storage. Padded edges on equipment reduce injury during rough movement. Controls are logically arranged. The driver's station has good visibility through periscopes. The gunner's station has adequate lighting. Small details. But small details accumulate. A crew that is comfortable and not fighting their own equipment performs better in combat. American tank design philosophy learned this lesson the hard way. Early war tanks were cramped and poorly laid out. By 1945, the improvements are significant. The armor profile tells the rest of the story. Frontal hull glacis is 4 inches of rolled homogeneous armor, sloped at 46 degrees from vertical. This is not the thickest armor ever mounted on a tank. The King Tiger has 6 inches on its frontal glacis. But thickness alone does not determine effectiveness. Slope matters. Angling armor increases its effective thickness against perpendicular hits. The Pershing's 4 inches at 46 degrees provides approximately 7 inches of effective protection. German 88mm guns can still penetrate this at reasonable combat ranges. The KWK-43 gun on the King Tiger can penetrate 7 inches of armor at well over 1,000 meters. The older KWK-36 gun on the Tiger I can penetrate it at closer ranges, perhaps 600 meters or less, depending on ammunition. The Pershing is not invincible, but it is much better protected than a Sherman, and, crucially, it can fire back effectively. That is the game changer. Mutual vulnerability. Turret front armor is 4 inches. Gun mantlet is another 4 inches, though the design has a vulnerability where the coaxial 30 caliber machine gun is mounted. The port is a hole through the armor. German crews who learn this aim for the machine gun port. If they can hit it, the shell passes straight into the turret. But hitting a small moving target at combat ranges is difficult even for trained gunners. Most German crews aim for center mass. Let probability work in their favor. Ballistic testing data, when it finally reaches German intelligence officers in early April, confirms their worst fears. The 90mm M3 gun-firing M82 APC-BC ammunition can defeat Panther frontal armor out to 1,100 yards. High-velocity armor-piercing rounds, designated T33, push that range even further, possibly 1,500 yards under ideal conditions. German crews trained to fight at 2,000 meters, where they held an advantage, now find themselves outgunned at half that distance. The comfortable margin of superiority has evaporated. The psychological impact is harder to quantify but just as real. For 2.5 years, Panther and Tiger crews wrote the rules of armored combat on the Western Front. They approached Allied armor with confidence bordering on arrogance. 88mm guns that reached out past 2,000 meters. Thick frontal armor that shrugged off most hits. Superior optics that allowed them to see and identify targets before the planned enemy saw them. Kill rings painted on gun barrels. 1 ring for each Allied tank destroyed. Some Panthers had 10 rings, some Tigers had 20. The crews believed in their machines, believed in their training, believed in the legend. The legend worked until it did not. Now, suddenly in the spring of 1945, the mathematics change. German tankers do mental calculations. At 1,500 meters, am I safe? Probably. The American 90mm gun's accuracy degrades with range, but probably is not certainly. At 1,000 meters, am I safe? No, definitely not. Do I hold this position or fall back? Doctrine says hold, but survival instinct says retreat. Hesitation replaces confidence. That hesitation gets people killed. But overconfidence also gets people killed. The psychology becomes paralyzing. Production numbers loom over every engagement like a statistical guillotine. By autumn of 1945, American factories produce more than 2,200 M26 Pershings. This is after only 10 months of production. Fisher Tank Arsenal, Grand Blanc Arsenal, Chrysler's Detroit Arsenal tank plant, multiple facilities running multiple shifts, 7 days a week. The production rate in July 1945 is projected to exceed 500 tanks per month. The war ends before that capacity is fully realized, but the potential is there. The infrastructure exists. American industry can scale production of heavy tanks the same way it scaled production of Shermans. 49,000 Shermans built between 1942 and 1945. The numbers are incomprehensible to German officers. Compare this to German heavy tank production. Tiger I, approximately 1,300 units built between 1942 and 1944. Tiger II, the King Tiger, approximately 490 units built between 1944 and 1945. Panther, approximately 6,000 units built between 1943 and 1945. These are respectable numbers for a nation under total war conditions. But they are dwarfed by Allied production. And German production is collapsing. Allied bombing raids on Henschel plants in Kassel cripple Tiger production. Daimler-Benz facilities are hit repeatedly. MAN plants producing Panthers are damaged. Raw material shortages force substitutions in armor quality. Experienced factory workers are conscripted into Volkssturm units to defend cities. The industrial base is dying. By contrast, American production in early 1945 is accelerating. No enemy bombers appear over Detroit or Grand Rapids. Raw materials arrive on schedule. Labor is plentiful. The learning curve for producing Pershings is steep initially, but American industrial engineers excel at optimization. Each successive production lot incorporates improvements. Manufacturing time per tank decreases. Quality increases. By April, the production process is mature. If the war in Europe had continued into summer, Pershing production would have reached full efficiency. Germany would have faced hundreds of American heavy tanks with no ability to match that production. German tankers captured after VE Day are shown Pershings during processing through POW camps. Standard procedure: intelligence officers want reactions, assessments. The responses vary. Some prisoners express surprise at the size. The Pershing is large, but not as large as a King Tiger. About the same dimensions as a Panther, actually. Some notice the crude welding on certain hull components. Evidence of rapid production. Welds that would not pass peacetime quality control, but functional, strong enough. Combat readiness matters more than appearance. A few prisoners offer technical critiques. These are usually experienced crewmen or officers with engineering backgrounds. They note that the engine is underpowered for the weight. The Ford Gaff was designed for a 30-ton Sherman, not a 46-ton heavy tank. The mobility suffers. German tanks, they point out, have better power-to-weight ratios. The Panther has 15.8 horsepower per ton. The Tiger I has 13 horsepower per ton. Even the heavy King Tiger has 10.2 horsepower per ton. The Pershing's 10.9 horsepower per ton is adequate but not impressive. The critiques are accurate. American tankers who crew Pershings have mixed opinions about the vehicle. The firepower is universally praised. The 90mm gun is excellent. The protection is adequate. Frontal armor stops most German anti-tank weapons at medium range, but the mobility is mediocre. The tank accelerates slowly, struggles on steep terrain. Maximum road speed is about 25 miles per hour. The Sherman can do 30 miles per hour on roads. For rapid exploitation advances across open country, the Sherman is preferred. Reliability is also a concern. Early production Pershings suffer transmission failures, track throws, final drive problems. These issues improve with later production lots, but the reputation sticks. None of this matters to the strategic narrative. The Pershing is good enough. It accomplishes the mission. It counters the Panther and Tiger effectively enough. It gives American crews confidence. They feel less vulnerable. Morale improves. And most importantly, it can be produced in massive numbers while German heavy tank production collapses. In warfare, adequacy at scale defeats excellence in scarcity every time. This is a lesson the Soviet Union understood early. The 34 was not the best tank of World War II by any technical measure, but it was good enough and produced by the tens of thousands. Numbers matter. Industrial capacity wins wars. Post-war analysis by American Army Ordnance confirms the Pershing's effectiveness in combat. Battlefield recovery teams examine destroyed German tanks in detail. Penetration patterns are consistent with 90mm impacts. Entry holes are clean, approximately 3.5 inches in diameter. The edges show characteristic petaling where the armor failed. Inside destroyed German tanks, spalling damage is catastrophic. When an armor-piercing shell penetrates, it does not need to explode. The kinetic energy transfer is enough. Fragments of the inner armor face separate and spray through the crew compartment at supersonic velocities. Anyone in the path is killed or severely wounded. German armor, for all its reputation, does not perform better than predicted by American test data. This is significant. Early in the war, there was a persistent belief that German armor was somehow superior. Metallurgy, manufacturing processes, secret techniques. Post-war analysis shows this was largely a myth. German armor is good quality, but not magical. American armor-piercing ammunition, when properly designed, penetrates it reliably. The problem was never German armor being too strong. The problem was American guns being too weak. The Pershing fixed that problem. German engineers, interrogated by Allied technical intelligence teams after the war, admit they underestimated American development timelines. The assumption within German planning circles was that American industry would continue producing Shermans in vast numbers rather than develop a new heavy tank from scratch. The logic was sound. Sherman production infrastructure was mature by 1943. Factories were tooled, workers were trained, supply chains were established. Retooling for a completely new design would take time and reduce output in the short term. Why would the Americans do that when they could produce 3 Shermans for every 1 new tank? German intelligence predicted no American heavy tank before late 1945 at the earliest, perhaps early 1946. The prediction was almost correct. Pershing development was delayed repeatedly by institutional resistance within the U.S. Army. General Leslie McNair, head of Army Ground Forces, opposed heavy tank production throughout 1943 and most of 1944. His tank destroyer doctrine held that tanks should support infantry, not fight other tanks. Specialized tank destroyers would handle enemy armor. These vehicles would be lighter, faster, and cheaper than tanks. The doctrine looked good on paper. In practice, it was disastrous. Tank destroyers could not be everywhere. When Shermans met Panthers or Tigers without destroyer support, the results were predictable. Burning Shermans, dead crews. Reports from Normandy in summer 1944 painted a grim picture. The Sherman was inadequate against German heavy armor. Crews knew it. Infantry knew it. Everyone except high command seemed to know it. But institutional inertia is powerful. Changing doctrine requires admitting mistakes. Admitting that the tank destroyer concept was flawed. That is politically difficult. Only the shock of the Battle of the Bulge in December 1944 forced a policy reversal. When the Germans launched their Ardennes offensive, they concentrated armor in a way they had not done since 1940. Approximately 400 Panther tanks, multiple Tiger battalions, King Tigers. American forces in the Ardennes were not prepared for concentrated armor assault. Shermans were destroyed in large numbers. The 75mm gun could not engage Panthers frontally. Crews had to maneuver for flank shots. In winter terrain with limited visibility, that was often impossible. Casualties mounted. After the Bulge, there was no more debate about heavy tanks. Orders went out. Deploy the Pershing immediately. The 20 pre-production T26 E3 tanks were rushed to Europe in January 1945 as part of the Zebra mission. Full production was authorized. Fisher tank arsenal ramped up. By March, production was flowing. By April, over 300 Pershings were in Europe, though most arrived too late to see combat. If the Pershing had deployed 6 months earlier, in Normandy, during Operation Overlord, the impact would have been profound. German Panther and Tiger units in France were already outnumbered and running low on fuel. Allied air superiority made daylight movement suicidal. German tank units could only operate effectively at night or in very poor weather. Adding American tanks with equivalent firepower to Panthers would have accelerated the collapse of German armored resistance. Engagements that historically involved Shermans maneuvering desperately for flank shots would have been straightforward frontal duels. The Normandy breakout might have occurred weeks earlier. The war in Europe might have ended in late 1944 instead of May 1945. But history does not deal in hypotheticals. Counterfactuals are exercises in speculation. The Pershing arrived when it arrived, and even in limited numbers, even arriving too late to affect the war's outcome, it changed the psychological equation for German armored units. The final irony, one that German tankers acknowledge in post-war discussions, is that they respect the Pershing as a design. Veterans like Otto Carius and Hans von Luck, interviewed in the 1980s and 90s, speak candidly about American armor. The Sherman was inferior to German medium and heavy tanks in almost every measurable way. This is not controversial. German veterans do not gloat about it. They simply state it as technical fact. The Sherman had thin armor, an adequate but not exceptional gun. It burned easily when hit. American tankers called them Ronsons, after the cigarette lighter company whose slogan was "Lights first time, every time." Grim humor masking genuine fear. But the Pershing is different. German veterans assess it as a competent design. The armor layout is logical. Sloped frontal glacis, well-protected turret. The gun is powerful and accurate. The crew ergonomics, from what they can tell examining knocked-out examples, are better than German designs. The optical sights are good quality. The ammunition stowage system with wet racks shows intelligent safety thinking. If Germany had access to American production capacity and raw materials, several veterans admit, they would have built something similar, perhaps with modifications, a more powerful engine, thicker armor if weight allowed. But the basic design is sound. This admission is significant. German tankers, particularly veterans of elite units, take pride in their technical expertise. They are not inclined to praise enemy equipment unless it genuinely deserves praise. The fact that they acknowledge the Pershing as a worthy opponent says more than pages of technical specifications. It validates the American design philosophy. Not the best possible tank, not the most innovative, but good enough, producible in quantity, and backed by industrial capacity that could maintain and replace losses indefinitely. Otto Kerius, who commanded Tiger tanks and survived the war with over 150 confirmed kills, describes the final weeks in detail during a 1992 interview. By April 1945, he explains, German tank crews knew the war was lost, not suspected, knew. The Red Army was in Berlin, Western allies were across the Rhine, Germany was cut in half, fuel was gone, ammunition was scarce, replacement parts were non-existent, orders from higher command made no strategic sense, hold impossible positions, counterattack with units that did not exist. Fight to the death for cities that were already abandoned. The question was not if they would lose, Karius says, but when, and whether individual soldiers would survive to see the end. Every engagement carried the risk of death for no strategic purpose. A tank commander could follow orders, engage the enemy, and die defending a crossroads that would be bypassed within hours. Or he could interpret orders creatively, fall back before contact, claim mechanical failure, abandon the tank when fuel ran out, desert entirely. These were not theoretical options, they were daily decisions. Orders to hold positions were increasingly ignored in April 1945. Tanks were abandoned in working condition. Crews simply walked away, not from cowardice, Karius insists, but from rational calculation. Why die for a regime that was already dead? Why sacrifice yourself for Hitler, who was cowering in a bunker in Berlin, detached from reality, issuing orders to armies that no longer existed? Junior officers and NCOs made their own decisions. Some fought, some surrendered. Some disappeared into the chaos of collapsing Germany. The appearance of the Pershing, Karius explains, removed one of the last incentives German tankers had to keep fighting. Earlier in the war, crews could tell themselves they had technical superiority, better tanks, better training, individual skill and courage could make a difference. A good crew in a Panther could take on 3 or 4 Shermans and win. Those odds were acceptable. There was honor in that fight. But against a Pershing, the fight was even, maybe 50-50 depending on circumstances, crew quality, terrain, who saw who first. And an even fight, when the strategic situation is hopeless, is not worth taking. If German crews could not rely on technical superiority to offset numerical inferiority, there was no point engaging. Better to retreat, better to surrender, better to survive. The Pershing did not have to destroy hundreds of German tanks to affect German morale, it just had to exist. The knowledge that American firepower had caught up was enough. Gunther Wiesens, a Panther driver captured near Magdeburg on April 28, 1945, describes his final engagement in detail during interrogation. His unit, what was left of it, encountered American armor at approximately 1,300 meters. Rolling terrain, farmland, poor visibility due to morning fog. The company commander ordered the unit to engage. Standard doctrine. Panthers had the range advantage. Engage before the enemy closes. Wiesen's tank fired first. The gunner was experienced. The shot was good. But the American tank fired back immediately, at that range, with accuracy. The shell struck the Panther's frontal armor and penetrated. Clean through. The driver to Wiesen's right was killed instantly. The radio operator lost both legs. Wiesen's himself was thrown against the controls by the impact. Dazed, ears ringing, blood everywhere. He crawled out through the driver's hatch, fell to the ground, lay there for several minutes, unable to move. When American infantry reached him 20 minutes later, he was still lying next to the tank. They gave him water, called for a medic. He asked what kind of tank had shot them. An American soldier showed him, a Pershing, about 400 meters away now, advancing with infantry support. Wiesen's looked at it. Low profile, large turret. He had never seen one before, thought it was some kind of Sherman variant. "How many of these tanks do you have?" he asked the American soldier. The soldier shrugged. "Lots," he said. "More coming every day?" That casual answer, Wiesen's recalls, was more demoralizing than the actual combat. The Americans had industrial capacity to produce advanced tanks in quantity. They were not limited to small numbers of prototypes. This was mass production. Wiesen's understood immediately what that meant. Germany could not compete, could never compete. Even if German engineers designed a better tank tomorrow, there was no way to build it in sufficient numbers. The factories were bombed. The workers were gone. The raw materials were unavailable. American production was infinite by comparison. The interrogation reports from April and May 1945 compile a damning psychological portrait. German morale in armoured units collapsed not because of any single defeat, but because the cumulative realization that technological advantage was gone. French tank crews in 1940 had experienced something similar. Superior numbers, decent tanks in some cases, but German panzers were better coordinated, better led, more aggressively employed. French morale shattered when they realized their advantages did not matter. German tank crews in 1945 experienced the inverse. Their technical advantages, which had sustained them through 3 years of war against increasing odds, were evaporating. For 2 years, Panthers and Tigers had been force multipliers. One German tank could hold off 3 or 4 Allied tanks through superior firepower and armour. That advantage allowed understrength German units to contest ground against numerically superior opponents. Take away the advantage, and the math becomes impossible. If one Pershing can kill one Panther in a fair fight, and the Americans have 10 times as many tanks, Germany loses. Simple arithmetic. The will to fight, which had kept exhausted German soldiers in the field despite hopeless strategic circumstances, evaporated when the tactical superiority was removed. Allied intelligence officers note the pattern in their reports. German tank crews captured in March 1945 still express confidence in their equipment despite everything. They believe in their Panthers and Tigers, even as their nation collapses around them. Crews captured in May sound defeated, demoralized. They speak of the Pershing with something approaching respect. More importantly, they speak of it with fear. Not the abstract fear of combat, which all soldiers feel, but specific fear of an opponent they cannot reliably beat. That fear is corrosive to morale in ways that numbers alone are not. Production data makes the disparity almost comically lopsided. Between January and May of 1945, American factories produce over 2,000 M26 Pershings. In the same 5-month period, German industry produces fewer than 100 Panthers and perhaps a dozen King Tigers. These are estimates. Record-keeping in Germany breaks down in early 1945. Exact production numbers are impossible to verify, but the scale of the disparity is clear. Bombing raids on Henschel plants in Kassel reduce Tiger II production to a trickle. The factory is hit repeatedly in February and March, Roof structures collapse. Machine tools are destroyed. Even when the factory is operational, electrical power is intermittent. Production shifts are reduced from 3 per day to 1. Then production stops entirely in mid-April when American ground forces approach Cassel. The last King Tiger rolls off the line on March 20, 1945. After that, nothing. Daimler-Benz facilities producing Panthers are similarly crippled. Bombing damages the main assembly building in Stuttgart. Raw material deliveries stop when rail lines are cut. Steel shipments from the Ruhr are impossible after the Allies capture the region in early April. Aluminum for engine blocks becomes unavailable. Copper for electrical systems is redirected to more critical military production. Substitutes are employed. Cast iron replaces aluminum in some components. The quality suffers. Engines fail after fewer hours of operation. Transmissions wear out prematurely. Experienced factory workers are conscripted into Volkssturm militia units as American and Soviet forces approach German cities. Men who have been building tanks for 3 years are handed rifles and told to defend their hometowns. Most have minimal combat training. They are factory workers, not soldiers. The results are predictable. High casualties, mass surrenders. The institutional knowledge for building complex armored vehicles is scattered or killed. Even if Germany had survived the war, rebuilding that knowledge base would have taken years. American industry faces no such constraints. No enemy bombers appear over Detroit, Grand Rapids, or any other manufacturing center. Raw materials arrive on schedule from mines and mills across North America. Steel from Pittsburgh. Aluminum from Alcoa facilities in Pennsylvania and Tennessee. Copper from mines in Montana and Arizona. Rubber for road wheels and track pads from synthetic rubber plants. The supply chain is robust and undisrupted. Labor is plentiful. Women enter factory work in large numbers. Rosie the Riveter is not just propaganda. She is real and she is building tanks. The learning curve for Pershing production is steep initially. Fisher Tank Arsenal in Grand Rapids had never produced tanks before the war. The facility was built specifically for war production. Workers are trained from scratch. Early production lots take longer than planned. Quality issues emerge. Welds crack, transmissions fail prematurely. But American industrial engineers excel at process optimization. Each problem is analyzed. Solutions are implemented. Later production lots incorporate improvements. Manufacturing time per tank decreases from 3 weeks in January to less than 2 weeks by April. Quality increases as workers gain experience. By May 1945, the production process is mature. If the war in Europe had continued into summer, Pershing production would have reached full efficiency. The projected output for June 1945 is 600 tanks. July projection is 700. These are not wild estimates. They are based on actual production data and capacity planning. American industry has demonstrated repeatedly that it can scale production of complex equipment. Liberty ships, B-17 bombers, Sherman tanks. The Pershing is no different. Give the factories time, and they deliver. Germany would have faced hundreds of American heavy tanks with no ability to match that production. The disparity would have become overwhelming by autumn 1945. Every destroyed Pershing would be replaced within days. Every damaged Pershing would be repaired or replaced. American logistics ensured a steady flow of replacement tanks, crews, ammunition, and spare parts. German logistics, by contrast, was non-existent. Tanks destroyed in combat were total losses. Damaged tanks were often abandoned for lack of spare parts or recovery vehicles. The final assessment from German tankers captured after VE Day is remarkably consistent. The Pershing arrived too late to change the outcome of the war in Europe. Germany was already losing in March 1945. The strategic situation was irreversible. Soviet armies were driving toward Berlin from the east. American and British armies were crossing the Rhine from the west. Germany was surrounded, blockaded, and running out of everything. The arrival of a new American tank did not alter those fundamental realities, but the Pershing changed how the war ended. It accelerated the psychological collapse of German armoured units. It forced a reckoning with the reality of industrial capacity. It demonstrated that American engineering, given time and resources, could match or exceed German designs, and it removed the last source of confidence that German tankers relied on. Technical superiority was gone, the playing field was level, and on a level playing field, the side with more tanks wins. Hans von Luck, commander of a Panzer reconnaissance unit, captured near Wismar on May 2nd, articulates this clearly in a 1987 interview. The Pershing, he says, was a wake-up call. Not because it was the best tank in the world. It was not. The King Tiger had more armour and a more powerful gun. British Centurions, which appeared very late in the war, had excellent armour and good mobility. The Pershing was merely good, but good was enough when backed by American production capacity. The Germans, von Luck explains, had been fighting on borrowed time since 1943, after Stalingrad, after Kursk, after the Battle of the Atlantic turned against U-boats. The strategic balance had shifted decisively. Germany could not win, but German soldiers continued fighting because they had advantages in training and equipment that allowed them to inflict disproportionate casualties. One German division could hold against 3 Allied divisions if the terrain favoured defence. German tank aces destroyed dozens of enemy tanks because German tanks were simply better. That calculus sustained morale through impossible circumstances. Soldiers will endure hardship if they believe their sacrifices matter, if they believe they can win individual engagements even as the overall war is lost. But when the equipment advantage disappears, morale collapses. Why fight? Why die? The question becomes unanswerable, and armies that cannot answer that question disintegrate. The Pershing was not just a tank, von Luck concludes. It was a message, a statement. The United States had the industrial power to produce cutting-edge weapons in massive quantities. The gap between prototype development and mass production was measured in months, not years. The American military-industrial complex could absorb losses and replace them, could learn from mistakes and improve designs, could scale production to meet any demand. That capability was terrifying to an enemy nation whose industrial base was dying. And the message extended beyond 1945. It carried implications for the post-war world. The Soviet Union was paying attention. Soviet intelligence officers examined captured Pershings carefully. They measured the armour, tested the gun, evaluated the design. Soviet tank development in the late 1940s and early 1950s shows clear influence from the Pershing. The T-54 medium tank, which entered service in 1947, incorporates lessons learned. The emphasis on mobility, firepower, and production efficiency mirrors American design philosophy. The Cold War arms race that followed World War II was shaped in part by what the Pershing represented. Both superpowers understood that future conflicts would be decided by industrial capacity as much as battlefield tactics. The ability to produce thousands of tanks was more important than having the single best tank. Mass matters. Sustainability matters. The Pershing proved that American industry could do both. Produce advanced designs and scale them to massive quantities. For German tankers who survived the war and returned to civilian life, the memory of encountering the Pershing stayed with them, not because of any single dramatic engagement, though Cologne certainly qualified, but because it represented the moment they knew, absolutely and without doubt, that Germany had lost the armoured war. Some describe it as a physical sensation, a tightening in the chest, a sinking feeling, the realization that all their training, all their skill, all their courage meant nothing against superior numbers and equivalent technology. Clarence Smoyer, the gunner who fired the 3 shots that killed Battleworthy's Panther at Cologne Cathedral, returns to Pennsylvania after the war. He works in steel mills, marries, raises a family. For decades, he rarely speaks about his combat experience. This is common among veterans. The memories are too painful, too complicated. How do you explain to people who were not there what it feels like to kill someone? Even when that someone was an enemy. Even when the killing was necessary and justified. The moral weight does not disappear just because the cause was righteous. In 1996, Over 50 years after the battle, Smoyer sees the footage Jim Bates filmed for the first time. A researcher locates him, shows him the newsreel. Smoyer watches himself fire 3 shots into the Panther, watches German crewmen bail out, watches the flames. He is silent for a long time. Then he says it still bothers him. The deaths. The young woman, Katharina Esser, who drove through the crossfire and died. The German gunner who burned inside the Panther. He has nightmares about it sometimes, after all these years. In 2013, at age 89, Smoyer travels back to Cologne. The trip is organised by historians and documentary filmmakers. They want to reunite him with German veterans of the battle. There are not many left. Most are dead. But they locate Gustav Schäfer, who crewed a Panzer IV in the same engagement. Schäfer is 92. He walks with a cane, but his mind is sharp. The 2 old men meet at the site where the Pershing Panther duel occurred. The street has been rebuilt. Modern buildings, cars, tourists visiting the cathedral. Nothing remains of the battle except photographs and memories. They speak through a translator. The conversation is brief, formal. What is there to say? They were enemies once. Now they are just 2 old men who survived. Schäfer says he believed he had shot the young woman's car. He was firing at Smoyer's Pershing. She drove through the line of fire. They still do not know which of their bullets hit her. Hearing Gustav say that lightens Smoyer's guilt somewhat, someone to share the burden with. They discuss it together, visit the exact spot where she died. A plaque marks the location now. Katharina Esser, 26 years old, killed by crossfire, March 6, 1945. The realization hits them both. It was the war that put them in that situation. Not personal malice, not individual choice. The war, men following orders, doing their duty, people caught in circumstances beyond their control. At first, Smoyer had been nervous about meeting a German veteran, but standing there, at the site, the old enmities seem distant, irrelevant. They are just men now. Survivors, bearing witness. Wilhelm Battleworthy, the Panther commander who hesitated that fatal half-second, surrenders shortly after bailing from his burning tank. American infantry capture him less than an hour after the engagement. He is processed through POW channels, spends the rest of the war in a camp in Belgium, returns to Germany in 1946. He lives a long life, works as a civil engineer, marries, has children. He lives to 93, dying in 1998, 15 years before the reunion in Cologne. His daughter, in interviews for documentaries about the battle, confirms what historians suspected. Her father told the family he thought the Pershing was a German tank. He had never seen one before. The hesitation cost him his tank and killed his gunner. That hesitation, measured in fractions of a second, captures everything about the Pershing's psychological impact. A veteran tank commander, experienced and decorated, sees an unfamiliar silhouette and freezes. The unknown is dangerous. In combat, uncertainty kills. The Pershing was unknown. German crews had no frame of reference. Was it American? Was it German? The confusion was fatal. The Pershing itself, after its brief combat career in Europe, becomes the foundation for American Cold War tank development. The M46 pattern, which enters service in 1948, is essentially an upgraded Pershing. More powerful engine, improved transmission, better reliability. The basic design remains unchanged: wide tracks for good ground pressure, low profile for reduced visibility, cast turret for armor efficiency. 90mm gun, later upgraded to 105mm in subsequent variants. The M47 follows in 1952, then the M48 in 1953. Each iteration improves on the previous design. Better engines, thicker armor, more powerful guns, better fire control systems. But the lineage is clear, all trace back to the Pershing. The design philosophy, established in 1944 and 1945, continues through 3 decades of American tank development. The M60 main battle tank, introduced in 1960, is the culmination of this lineage. It serves in the US Army until 1997. Over 30 years of frontline service, It sees combat in multiple conflicts. The Gulf War in 1991 demonstrates its effectiveness. M60 tanks destroy Iraqi T-55s and T-62s with relative ease. The technology gap is overwhelming. American tanks have laser rangefinders, thermal imaging, stabilized guns, digital fire control. Iraqi tanks have mechanical sights and manual controls. Even after retirement from US service, the M60 continues operating with allied nations: Egypt, Turkey, Jordan, Taiwan, many others. Some receive upgrade packages, modern fire control, reactive armor, improved engines. As of 2025, over 80 years after the Pershing entered service, M60 tanks derived from that design remain in frontline use in some countries. The design legacy outlives every German tank by decades. German tank development, by contrast, ends with the war. The Panther production line stops in April 1945. The Tiger line stopped earlier. Prototype projects like the E-series medium tanks, which were supposed to replace the Panther, never enter production. The Maus Super Heavy Tank project produces 2 prototypes. Both are destroyed or captured by Soviet forces. The designs are studied but not developed further. Too heavy, too slow, too expensive. The entire concept was impractical. Post-war Germany rebuilds with American and British equipment. The Bundeswehr, formed in 1955 as West Germany's new military, initially operates M47 Patton tanks supplied by the United States. These are direct descendants of the Pershing. German crews train on American equipment. American doctrine. The institutional knowledge from the Wehrmacht is deliberately not transferred. Too much association with Nazi regime. Too many war criminals in senior positions. The new German military starts fresh. German engineers eventually develop the Leopard 1 main battle tank in the 1960s. This is a modern design with no lineage to wartime Panthers. It uses a British gun, the Royal Ordnance L7A3. The engine is German-designed but follows modern principles. High power-to-weight ratio, good mobility, moderate armor. The design philosophy emphasizes speed over protection, very different from Tiger and Panther doctrine. The Leopard 2, introduced in 1979, continues this philosophy. Both are excellent tanks, but they represent a complete break from German wartime designs. The institutional knowledge is gone, the factories are destroyed. The engineers who designed Tigers and Panthers are dead, retired, or working in other industries. There is no continuity. The German tank development tradition that produced some of the most formidable armoured vehicles of World War II does not survive into the post-war era. It ends in April and May of 1945, with the last Panthers rolling off assembly lines in factories that are about to be occupied by enemy forces. The myth of German tank invincibility takes longer to die than the actual tanks. Post-war histories, particularly popular accounts published in the 1950s and 60s, emphasize the superiority of German armor. Tigers and Panthers are portrayed as wonder weapons, nearly unstoppable, defeated only by overwhelming numbers and Allied air power. The narrative is compelling. David versus Goliath, except David loses. German skill and technology overcome by brute force industrial capacity. But the narrative is selective. It ignores logistics. Ignores that German heavy tanks were mechanically unreliable. The Panther's final drive failed frequently. The transmission was fragile. The engine caught fire if not properly maintained. The Tiger was slow, fuel-hungry, and over-engineered. Every component was individually excellent, but the system as a whole was difficult to maintain in field conditions. The King Tiger was even worse. Beautiful on paper, a maintenance nightmare in reality. It could barely move off-road. The weight broke bridges. The transmission failed constantly. The narrative also ignores that German tanks, while individually superior to Shermans in many ways, were not invincible even against Shermans. American tank crews developed tactics. Maneuver to flank shots, use terrain, coordinate with infantry and artillery, accept losses but keep pushing. Sherman crews destroyed plenty of Panthers and Tigers through skill and tactics, even before the Pershing arrived. The Pershing made those victories easier, made them more survivable for American crews, but it did not fundamentally change the outcome. Recent scholarship corrects the record. Historians with access to wartime production data, combat reports, and post-war technical analysis paint a more nuanced picture. The Panther was a good tank with serious flaws. The Tiger was powerful but limited by mobility and reliability. German tankers were skilled and brave. German tactical doctrine was often superior to Allied doctrine, but skill and doctrine cannot overcome industrial collapse and strategic encirclement. The Pershing's role in this corrected narrative is specific and limited. It did not win the war. The war was already won by March 1945. Soviet armies were unstoppable in the east. Allied armies were overwhelming in the west. Germany had no fuel, no ammunition, no reinforcements. But the Pershing accelerated the endgame. It broke German armoured morale. It demonstrated that the technological gap had closed, and it sent a message that echoed into the Cold War. American industrial capacity, when fully mobilized, could produce world-class weapons in quantity. The encounters between Pershings and German tanks in March, April, and early May of 1945 are statistically insignificant in the broader context of World War II. 20 American tanks see combat, perhaps 30 engagements total, maybe 15 confirmed, kills of German armour, Panthers, Tigers, a few Panzer IVs. These numbers are rounding errors compared to thousands of tank battles fought on the Eastern Front. Compared to the hundreds of Sherman versus Panther engagements in Normandy, the Pershing's combat record is tiny, but the psychological impact is outsized beyond any reasonable proportion to the actual combat results. The Pershing represents something larger than its combat statistics. It represents the closing of the firepower gap, the end of German armoured supremacy, the inevitability of defeat. German tankers who survived the war carry that knowledge. In interviews conducted over subsequent decades, veterans describe the moment they learned about the Pershing. For some, it was seeing the Cologne footage. For others, it was first-hand encounters. For most, it was rumours and second-hand reports filtering through command channels. But all describe the same emotional response. Realization: the war is lost, the technological advantage is gone, there is no path to victory. No secret weapon will save us. No miracle will turn the tide. It is over. That realization, more than any battle or bombing raid, broke the will to continue fighting. Soldiers fight for many reasons: patriotism, duty, survival, comradeship. But in armoured warfare, where individual crew skill matters enormously, the belief that your equipment is superior provides crucial psychological support. A crew that believes their tank is better will take risks, will push harder, will fight longer. They can rationalize losses. The other crew was lucky. We made a mistake. Next time we will win. But take away the belief in technical superiority, and the foundation crumbles. If my Panther is no better than the enemy's Pershing, and the enemy has 10 Pershings for every one of my Panthers, why fight? The question becomes impossible to answer satisfactorily, and armies that cannot answer why they fight begin to disintegrate. The Pershing accomplished this psychological mission with only 20 tanks in combat. That is the real story, not the technical specifications, not the combat record, but the message it sent. American industry had caught up. American engineers could design and build tanks that matched German performance, and American production capacity could build them in overwhelming numbers. Any enemy, present or future, would face not just American soldiers but the full weight of American industrial civilization. The factories, the workers, the raw materials, the logistics, the relentless capacity to produce, maintain, and replace equipment on a scale that other nations could not match. The Pershing was proof of concept, and every German tanker who encountered it, or heard about it, or saw the footage, understood the implications immediately. The war was over. They had lost, not because they lacked skill or courage, but because the enemy had outproduced them, outbuilt them, overwhelmed them with industrial capacity that could not be matched. That lesson, learned in burning Panthers and Tiger wrecks scattered across Germany in spring 1945, shaped post-war understanding of modern warfare. Production capacity wins wars. Industrial scale matters more than individual excellence. The Pershing proved it, and the proof was written in steel and fire across the final battlefields of the Third Reich. Thank you for reading. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now, and don't forget to subscribe.